Steve, how's the Eurobox doing?
Better. The Eurobox has outperformed the BritBox mostly by having less almost total failure in it. There's still one or two that have done relatively badly, and a few that have kind of run away at the top end of things. But there's been a general kind of rotation towards Europe, actually, that you saw mostly in around the April. If you look at the no reason anyone should have looked at this, but if you look at the Bank of America Fund Manager Survey, what you saw in April was quite a heavy rotation out of European stocks. And I tried to make the case that this was bull market time for the UK in a full article, which did quite well, actually, because they were rotating into that. And that's true, but what they were rotating into more was European stuff. Actually, a good amount of what they were rotating into was European defence stocks, like Rheinmetall and Leonardo and so on and so forth, neither of which we own in this portfolio. But if you're looking at where the funds have been going, well, they've been going into Polish supermarkets, specifically Dino Polska, which has done very well since the start of the year, considering it was a stock that I do know a bit about that and what they kind of sets them apart in their rather competitive industry of Polish supermarketing. They are a combination of local and fairly high scale and fairly low cost, and have a fresh meat counter, which is apparently unusual in there. They're not like massively inspiring stores, but they do very well. And I looked at their latest report for this, which I almost never do for stocks that I don't own and or can't write about. Thought their same store sales were fairly underwhelming, actually. It was a reasonably low number when I looked, but that has not stopped the year-to-date return being really pretty high. Following that, we're in more conventional territory. We've got Euronext, which is until recently fixture an important part of Steve's portfolio, and it's done very well, and we know it's done very well already. Ryanair, which was one of mine, Svenska Handelsbanken, Safran, which was one of yours, I think, Steve. Carl Zeiss, which was literally my final choice. Legrand rounds out the top end of this, and these are all up more than 20%, which is handy stuff for the year. Down the other end, I suppose when I look at the bottom three, there's two that surprise me, one that surprises me and two that doesn't. The one that is stone dead last is Redcare Pharmacy. We've not really talked about that in depth on the show beyond introducing it for the Eurobox, but when you introduced it, and it was one of yours here, I thought it was a really nice idea. So it's basically an online pharmacy thing, has its own distribution, should in general be pretty good for dispensing medication to various parts of Europe. I think they operate in more than one country. So that's down quite significantly, and in fact is a handy rival to anything in the BritBox in terms of going backwards. As I look at it here, the two above that are maybe a bit more predictable. I mean, they weren't when we picked them, but for anyone that's been paying attention over the last 6 months or so, not a big surprise that Pernod Ricard has gone backwards. It's gone backwards for much the same reason that Diageo over in the BritBox has. And you can sort of match them up against each other. Pernod was my choice, and that has not proved to be a good idea so far. Diageo was either a joint choice or yours, I think, Steve. I think it was yours, but I would have if you hadn't. So I'm not trying to particularly land you with that particular responsibility. Novo Nordisk, though, has been, a really interesting sort of 6 months, but not in a particularly encouraging way. They're currently having an argument with Hims and Hers, and now that you've sold them, Steve, I sort of hope they both lose, but I'm kind of on the side of Novo Nordisk on this one. Something that doesn't quite get me quite right about Hims and Hers, but all three of those have been the kind of big disappointments as I see them since the start of the year here. There's been some other things that have been a bit more encouraging, but that's the kind of top and bottom end of this, and it's reasonably split between the two of us in both cases.
Yeah, I agree with that, Steve. The sort of disappointing is the end of the portfolio, isn't it? I think where we've got Novo, Pernod Ricard, Porsche, and to a lesser degree Redcare Pharmacy. So Redcare Pharmacy, the story with that is essentially profit downgrade, then a placing, and then a downgrade from an analyst that was previously bullish, went from buy to hold. And that took the last sort of 5 or 6% of it. But I think it's still going okay. Its e-prescription service is still growing pretty well. and I think we'll be interested to see how that one goes. In terms of chopping block, Steve, I think there's very little change that I want to really make to this one. I mean, I was interested to see that Inditex is down a little bit. I think that might be something we could consider adding the dividend money to at some point. Interested to see Novo Nordisk down so far, but I actually think that's less of an interesting thing to buy, basically for the reasons I gave earlier in the portfolio, that I think it is being outcompeted quite well by Eli Lilly, whose drug is about 50% more effective, and that's not good news. Adidas down about 15% for us, Steve, which is something that we could consider adding to. And I guess the things I would put on the list are pretty straightforward, but I would think a straightforward swap for maybe Novo Nordisk to something like Roche could be quite interesting, Steve. And beyond that, I'm not massively interested in changing this portfolio too much, Steve. How do you feel about it?
It's an odd one. It's sort of the opposite way round to the BritBox, in that there's nothing I massively feel like I would want to part with here. But there are, we were talking beforehand, a kind of couple of names that we either overlooked, or in my case overlooked, or consciously decided we weren't going to go for. And the one that we flagged when we did the Eurobox episode to start off with was LVMH, because it was down at the time. It's a company that we both like quite a lot. We just didn't find space for it in there. And it's now even cheaper than it was since the start of the year. I've got it at a P of between 17 and 18 here, which does not sound like a lot for LVMH. I haven't looked very closely at their earnings and the like yet, but when I kind of look at them and I see what's going on there in terms of cyclicality, they have been in a downturn of a sort. But if you're looking at them at 17 times earnings that you think might be depressed in some way, I think that's sort of reasonably attractive for this type of operation. The things that have been doing well, as I mentioned before, have been defence stocks, and they've been generally doing very well, but they are also quite volatile. I don't follow any of these super closely because I don't necessarily know one from another terribly well, but hard to ignore what's been going on at Rheinmetall, and it's similar things going on at Leonardo in Italy. Actually, Cohort in the UK, which is a stock that I do follow, has been very much setting off move 5% within a week notifications on me nearly every other day as something that's been going off on my screen. It's always interesting with the Eurobox. I sort of wonder whether one of those, Porsche might make way for one of those, given that we also have Ferrari in there. Ferrari is faring better, but I think it's got a bit more going on for it than Porsche has. I don't feel hugely strongly like that was a mistake or that I've glaringly overlooked something here. But the one name that kind of makes me wonder, both in the context of my own portfolio actually, and in the context of the Eurobox, is LVMH, and whether there might be a space for that, having let this settle for 6 months or so.
The other one, Steve, that I just want to throw into the mix then is Prismium, which that's an Italian company. They're one of the leaders in undersea cabling and the like. They're not trading particularly cheap, although they've not had a great year. They're down about 3 or 4% year to date. But they're trading at about 25 times earnings at the moment, which, Steve, we pretty much found every company in Europe that was doing that, and it's not going so badly for us. So if we can find a space for that, that might be worth considering as well. It's a very, very good company. It is essentially, this is lazy and I'm going to do it anyway, Steve, but it is the ASML of undersea cabling. There isn't many people who can do it the way that Prismian do it. And one of the reasons they have suffered in the last year is that tariffs. They thought that the tariffs would make them kind of anti-competitive. to American kind of startup-y kind of firms. And what we've actually found with Prismian is that's not really the case. And they're quite happy to let their customers eat up the tariff, Steve, which is always a good sign of a company that believes it has a moat. So we've got a lot of thinking to do, and we'd obviously love to hear from you guys on it as well. So if you've got any ideas of companies that we're absolutely missing, or we're just turning a blind eye to, we'd love to hear it. But for me, I think Novo Nordisk for Roche would be my initial thought about what we swap. And I guess if we wanted to get LVMH in, the swap for Pernod would make sense to me, I assume. And then we've just got to see if there's anything we want to do really beyond that, Steve. Whether that's Porsche out for something or whatever. I'm not entirely sure at the moment. How do you feel?
Just to say, if anyone is thinking of commenting down below, very welcome to. We'd love to hear all of your ideas. Before you get there ahead of me on these four, Bergman and Beving, Lagerkrantz, Adco, and Lifco would all have been on my list. I wouldn't have said add all of them, but they would all have been candidates that I would have been thinking about and trying to find a winner from. And we can't buy them because they're all Sweden listed and they don't have OTC ADRs that we can get to. OTC listings that we can get to through Trading 212. To my great dismay, these are all Swedish Halma alike things, or Swedish Constellation Software alike things, or the kind of structure that actually, Steve, you and I have been quite positive on recently, sort of kind of roll-up things that dominate areas and achieve good things by scale, trade at massive PE ratios, and never really seem to care. However, point is kind of moot on any of those because we can't buy them. Otherwise, fair to say I probably would have been making a case for at least one of these, but I did at least check on Trading 212 first before I went and sunk a load of research time into these things. You've been watching a segment from the Playing FTSE show, brought to you in association with our favourite broker, Trading 212. For the full version of the show, check us out on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you open a new account with Trading 212 using the link in the description, there's a free fractional share in it for you. Just make sure that you use the code FTSE when you sign up. Terms and conditions apply, and do remember that when investing, your capital is at risk.